I think there's also a lot of evidence or proof already that like regulation and a level playing field is actually supporting innovation to a large extent, because it gives like opportunity to more than those dominating the market in the first place.
I was very pleased to invite Peter Knees today here in the Boni Laundry. Peter is one of the key figures of the Viennese Digital Humanism initiative, formerly founded by Hannes Wertner and many others who were in this. We spoke about what digital humanism can be today, where it comes from and where it can lead to. And I think some of the thoughts are particularly relevant in our times today, when we see more and more of pushing back initiatives in the European regulatory environment. Peter, thank you so much for coming here. You are, I think, the most prominent person when it comes to digital humanism in general and in Vienna in particular. Perhaps you would be so kind to explain to us what this is, digital humanism, and what you're doing in this initiative.
Well, thanks for the invitation, first of all, and thanks for that opportunity. I would disagree that I'm the most known or famous person in this regard, honestly. I mean, there's many people that carry that initiative. But digital humanism is, a movement, an initiative that, at least from my perspective, I'm from the TU Wien. I have a background as a computer scientist. Something that emerged very strongly from the Faculty of Informatics of TU Wien, from the experience, from the feeling, from the perception that all of a sudden computer science is in the middle of society and is perceived somewhat as an issue through some of the some of the developments that are mostly connected with big tech coming from the United States, but also from China and so on, that all of a sudden, let's say, human rights, fundamental rights are somewhat endangered through the use of technology and digital technologies particularly, that comes from concepts or from identification of things like surveillance capitalism, for instance, where you see business models that are being developed in a way that they threaten human rights to some extent as well. And people associate, let's say, the consequences of this technology to some extent also with the people who develop these technologies, whereas the people that develop that don't have these intentions in the first place. So the question comes back to, in our case, computer scientists, of asking ourselves, what's maybe going wrong? What's the issue? Why do we end up in a situation where we want to build systems that are actually solving a problem, that are actually supposed to help people in turning into, let's say, a global machinery of surveillance, of invasion of privacy, or threatening people's pursuit of life in some other ways. Yeah.
And when did this start? What would you coin as the beginning moment?
I think there were different developments beforehand, but for this term of digital humanism, it was really in the year 2019 that the term was serving as the title of a workshop, as it often happens. It happens in a similar way with artificial intelligence in the 50s, that there was first a workshop and then people tried to develop the concept further. But digital humanism, there was a workshop in Vienna organized at the Faculty of Informatics that was highly interdisciplinary, because it's not something that only computer scientists will be able to answer from a technical perspective only, but actually it's a societal phenomenon, and therefore also broad society needs to talk about it.
Yeah, and that was 2019, as you said, and we have 2025 now, so 6 years of development. Did it develop well in your view?
I think it is actually quite phenomenal development. I mean, you were one of the participants and one of the speakers at this initial workshop, so it was. I think you've closely followed it also, the developments. I would say that despite the fact that we had the COVID pandemic in the meantime, which was really a difficult time also to keep such initiatives going. Actually, it developed into, let's say, a very a global network to some extent, even, of people, like-minded people that sign up to that idea of digital humanism. I would, more than, let's say, on the side of the theoretical framework, see that there's some concrete outcomes, like academic world, of course, in the academic world, of course, but also in terms of policy adoption, for instance, in terms of people associating with this concept on a very wide, in a very right, on many different levels. Also, I think that is one of the real measurable success factors in a way.
Yeah. So let's look a little bit deeper into this. So, what is the most important academic outcome? What is the most important policy impact that the initiative has developed so far?
Well, I think in terms of research outcomes and so on, the academic outcome, what we see in like a published collection or like a collection of articles that have been written by the initiative, by members of the initiative. There's 2 textbooks that are also freely available, so they're open.
Yeah. Link in the description below.
Exactly. Also hit like. So these are actually highly circulated, and there's we have like combined over 1.5 million downloads of these books in a very, very short amount of time. So for a concept that is not as established, really the interest is very high, and people really want to read this. And these are two books. Like, one is the Perspectives on Digital Humanism, which tries to give, from different backgrounds, where is digital humanism relevant in their field? Like, where could it have an impact? How could their field benefit from it? And then we realized that the feedback that we got was also, you need to have a very interdisciplinary background to understand this. Yeah. So there's the Introduction to Digital Humanism, which is a textbook which should give the foundations of exactly that. So people from different disciplines describe what you need to know about their field in order to understand better how digital humanism comes into play here. And again, I think this is a very good basis for people not only who want to teach it, but who want to participate in the discussion. Who want to learn something about other disciplines, because again, this is not a computer scientist discipline alone. Yeah. But this has implications for basically every direction.
Yeah, that makes it so interesting, and at the same time also so challenging somehow, because the people working on this are, many of them are computer scientists, obviously, but others are ethicists or philosophers or sociologists or political scientists, lawyers, etc. Do you think that after 6 years working in this domain, we, being part of this group, somehow managed to find some kind of joint perspective, joint view, and joint vocabulary on the phenomenon?
I think the mutual understanding has grown, honestly. Yeah. I think that if you, people did have an understanding, but I think particularly through the development of AI, or like things like events like ChatGPT being available and so on, there's a massively bigger interest in these topics in the broader public, and at the same time, people understand more and more also the technical foundations, the technical limitations, and so on. I think so. There's a broader understanding of the technical side, or what these systems actually do, right? So that's one thing that I see. I think vice versa. I think there's a much better, understanding also how this overall system connects in a way, right? So when you talk about policy, for instance, how important it is to have regulation, how important it is to have proper regulation that is very clear in some cases, because otherwise there's going to be loopholes, etc. So, there's many implicit assumptions about certain things and certain technological developments, I think, that need that kind of clarity, and how difficult it is to come to a conclusion there. And I think it's the same in other fields as well, that we just have through that ongoing discussion just a better and better understanding of how multifaceted the problem is and what to look for. So in a way, I'm not sure that that the problem converges. I think it's just a better understanding of how far-reaching the problem actually is. And
would you consider this to be the most important societal impact then too, that that the initiative, somebody managed to put this somehow on the agenda, at least in Vienna?
In Vienna, it's it's very much on the agenda. I think that is very much one of the biggest impacts that we have. Yeah. But apart from the political dimension here, which I think, we can be very happy that there's such a good reception, and that decision makers, policymakers, and so on understand the need for these things. I would also say that that societal impact comes from engaging with society. I would not say this is very much a top-down approach. I think this is very much a bottom-up approach. It is about talking to people about the issues that they have.
Mm-hmm.
It is like the questions that they have, like why is ChatGPT working the way it is? Why is it not working? What is the issue? What is the problem that emerges? People see the discussions that are going on, and they want to like have some get informed answers about these things. So I think this is definitely one of the big impacts, apart from the multiplying effects and so on, is really talking to people and engaging with people. We do this with Volkshochschulen, community colleges. We do this with schools, high schools, etc. So there's lots of initiatives where we actually go out and discuss these matters, not only on the technical side, but also the implications of what that means in the bigger picture.
Yeah, and is this something that could be expanded beyond Vienna, I would assume, or beyond Austria? And if so, do you have any plans in reaching out to, for example, to Brussels and other legislative environments?
Well, Brussels is aware, I would say. So there's also research programs and calls that also mention and already mentioned digital humanism as one of the principles that should be on the European agenda as well. Because always the question is, wow, where's the place of Europe in this like almost technological bipolar world between Silicon Valley and China somehow? And is kind of digital humanism maybe a European way and a European perspective of dealing with this, right? I think that is something that is debated for sure. I think that that has happened already, and there's also already European research programs and research projects that are on the way, that are undergoing, and that we're also involved in. That very like at the core, like incorporate principles of digital humanism. One of them is focusing on education, the Eurydice project, which has really the goal of making first of all forming a cross-European master's program for the digital society that adopts lots of these principles and ideas of digital humanism. That I think is very much focused on education. Also, the initiatives with the high schools that we have, a school book that we did in collaboration. Like these are outcomes, concrete outcomes that we get from these projects as well. Another one is more of a network building with the perspective of incorporating or like finding paths for innovation within Europe that also is not just a copy or like a carbon copy of what happens in the United States or in China, but also European way, which is the UDIT project, which is really about a European digital humanism initiative and bringing as many players on board as possible and finding common strategies to make that happen.
And who are the players?
Well, Vienna is a player, but of course we have networks in, I would say, most of the European countries somehow. So we see a lot of here connections to the Netherlands, for instance. The Netherlands are also a strong advocate of this of the education initiative. There also is there's also a Dutch translation of the school book that we did very recently. We have the connections to Italy, for instance. Again, there's an Italian version of the school book, so you can see like how these networks are forming. But then there's connections to Germany. We have like industry partners like IEEE as a standardization body that has lots of connections and impact there, and so on. So we really have broad support from very different initiatives that are all understanding the importance.
Yeah, and you said before that the book on its own has 1.5 million downloads, or views.
Two books.
Two books. Yeah, but I mean, even if it were 10, it's a very, very, very impressive figure. And the question coming with that would be, which responses do you receive? Are people supporting the ideas? Are they critical? Do they see any strength, any flaws in the approach? What is your perception of
both? I would hope so. I mean, if people are not critical, I mean, this would be.
So, what is the most important criticism? What is the most important endorsement?
That will take a bit longer to discuss.
We have plenty of time. That's an advantage of this format.
Right. So, I mean, I think in general, you won't find people who don't agree that it's important to have human values in technological developments. I mean, it's kind of a given. I think in general, like the goals and so on, yes, of course, people can sign up. I think in the detail, you might have some some points that you can very much criticize. It starts already with the terminology of digital humanism. That is one thing that we get a lot of, let's say, criticism for and backlash on.
But I would assume that this is mainly philosophers or people who are professionals in the history of thinking and thought. But I don't know whether a computer scientist is somehow concerned about whether this is humanism or ethics or whatever. So how would you perceive this?
I would say that also the computer scientists would find reasons to not sign up to this, and I fully share the concern when you think about like the history of the term humanism and how it has been used. So it's not only like the philosophical side, but it's also let's say the colonial history that is often like coming with this. So people from certain regions of the world are not very big fans of that term. We just have to agree to that, we understand where this is coming from, of course. And I think it is a different story once you describe what it's about. So I'm very much a fan of describing what we want to do and what we do more than, let's say, signing up to the ideal of like defining any new humanism, for instance, right? So there's a lot of criticism about that, and I fully understand that. And I'm not sure I would have chosen the term if it wouldn't have been defined beforehand by different people in different contexts beforehand. But it is a very powerful concept, and I think you understand easily why, like, what the goal is of this initiative. But let me come back to this. Often the criticism is that it's actually not a humanism, if we're actually very, very precise with the definition, or with the way that it was outlined in the Vienna Manifesto on digital humanism, which is kind of the foundational paper and proclamation, let's say, of digital humanism following that initial workshop, that digital humanism strives for a better world, right, where tech developments go in line with human values. But I think it's very important to say that maybe in contrast to many other humanisms, it's actually not defining, or it's not normative on what humans should be. I think this is exactly the issue, and this is why humanism is such a critical and really problematic concept in that sense. If you look at it historically, that it always has some ideal of a human involved, and that also includes a separation, distinction from other people who don't fulfill that ideal, which is not our goal at all. We don't have any definition of what humans are about in here. We we accept humans the way they are, and we are on the foundation of human rights. So that is not the point here. It is actually very normative on the technological developments. It very much says that technological developments should be done in a certain way. There's some ideals for these developments, but not for the people that are operating it. So yes, in that sense, it's actually not a humanism, and actually it's maybe not a good term, but I think it allows to engage in a discussion about these things that are very important. And so I would not abandon that term and that brand to some extent.
Okay. So I'm very much aware of this debate, of course, because it's very much related to some of the things that I'm doing, but I'm not that familiar with other criticism that might, for example, come, and that's the next question, therefore, that might, for example, come from big tech companies or other legislations, or I don't know whether you receive any feedback from Microsoft or Google or whatever, or the US Department of Justice or whatever, or whether and if so, whether this is critical, and if so, how the criticism looks like.
I would say that we don't get that criticism necessarily because those who would not be in favor of it would just ignore us, right?
Okay.
I think
so
this
that's
is the strategy.
Okay.
I think that would be the strategy here. We do have connections with Microsoft, and Microsoft, top level management people of Microsoft have also spoken in the context of digital humanism and don't have any problems with the term. They will also advertise what they're doing in the company to show that they're actually in favor of these concepts, because there might be ethics checks and so on. So they want to do the best they can. But in a way, this is always showcasing what's there and might not be so open to the criticism on other things. There is one aspect here in digital humanism that is also maybe not reflected in the regulation on the EU level, for instance, and so on, and that is that of autonomous weapons, for instance, right? So like the military research and all of this. This is something, of course, that digital humanism is very critical of, but that you won't find a lot in the regulation, and that is also something that companies won't talk a lot about, because, of course, this goes very quickly into ethical debates and what is allowed. So I think there's some, let's say, some uncharted territory when it comes to these kind of debates. But so far, I think therefore we should also like put into perspective like what impact it has had internationally. We can still be ignored also, right?
However, I mean, one of the bigger political debates, as far as I can tell, is that Europe, of course, is constantly confronted with the claim that Europe is over-regulating, that the US are the big innovators, or China is also a competitive innovator now, and Europe is somehow very good in regulating, but not that good in inventing. And I would assume that this is something that you will also hear, and I would like to hear what you are answering to that.
Yeah, I mean that argument is there, and I'm not sharing it. Yeah, absolutely.
That doesn't astonish me too much, yes. I must say.
No, absolutely. I think that regulation is just necessary, and I think there's also a lot of evidence or proof already that like regulation and a level playing field is actually supporting innovation to a large extent, because it gives like opportunity to more than those dominating the market in the first place. We do see, however, like how this, for instance, the EU regulation seems to be threatening business models of big tech corporations who are lobbying massively against it. And therefore, the regulations that the EU has long fought for and long negotiated are under imminent threat, like ongoing, even though there might be some wins in between. But this is really a struggle and a fight for this type of regulation, for these European values. Can always argue if there shouldn't have been more, if it should have been a different way, and so on. But at least there is some statement here that has been made, and I think it would send a very fatal signal if really now the EU would step back from this regulation. And what's currently happening in terms of we need to be more friendly to innovation and so on. I mean, this is kind of how it's in the end presented, but of course it's a massive impact and the lobbying of big tech companies that's happening
and
here.
It's somehow an irony that we are having this debate today on the 7th of November, because today in the morning there were news out there that the Commission is in the process of reconsidering now whether the AI Act should be or some parts of the AI Act implementation should be delayed, right?
Well, that's horrible. I wasn't aware of this, but of course, that's exactly the wrong signal here. Maybe it's also trying to show some, like some flexibility when we don't know what comes out of this. But I think it's very wrong to negotiate on that level. But we see also that this there's many interests behind this, and like. And it's a difficult how to say, like, deliberation here, but again, I don't think by like not one Yoda should one compromise this regulation at the moment.
So let me then ask you how you would see the role of an initiative like the Digital Humanism. I don't know whether you would even call it an initiative.
Right.
So
anymore, right? Yeah.
What?
Anymore. Like,
anymore. So or whatever. So the Digital Humanism X. What is the role of this? Is it just to provoke thoughts and to bring in our opinion? And to somehow hopefully foster the debate? Or is it also to politically intervene, lobby, reach out to parties, etc.? And where is there a red line, and where is it to be drawn?
No, well, it is part of that. I mean, to the extent that we can, of course. I mean, it's not like we're not a well-funded lobbying organization that does this professionally. Yeah. But what we can do is bring in expertise and bring in arguments, of course. But then we have to show where are the openings for this. And for instance, in terms of the regulation and in terms of the AI Act, there was an open letter that was drafted or written by the Digital Humanism Initiative that was supported by over 400 scientists, knowledgeable scientists in this area, that was then presented to the European Parliament, and that was then also considered as a petition, and that has been decided to be kept open. You would know about the legal terms, what this actually means, but it's something that was well received, let's put it that way, like by the parliament, because it is an additional way and let's say additional leverage when it comes to these negotiations. And I think it's important also to show that this is not something that is negotiated on the level of lobbyists only and politicians on the other hand, but there's actually society experts, scientists, and so on behind this and support the EU in these endeavors.
Yeah, but at the same time, you also drive further the whole thing by incentivizing and deepening the academic research. One of the reasons why we are doing this together today is that I have the privilege to participate in this college on digital humanism, which you are, I think, I don't know whether you invented it, but at least you are one of the very important founders of this. So what is this and how is it connected with the general outreach and the societal outreach?
I co-shaped this. I would not say more than this, but of course, that's very much an academic initiative, but the goal is here to bring the concept of digital humanism into concrete projects, into research projects, and this in a very interdisciplinary fashion. That is the key. That was clear from the very beginning. That was clear as not only from the design of the initial workshop, but also from the outcomes, that it's not possible any other way than doing interdisciplinary work. We have to collaborate not only across disciplines, also across institutions and so on. So this is something that has been initiated by the WWTF, the Vienna Science and Technology Fund, to actually facilitate this cross-disciplinary work within the city of Vienna. And also, of course, therefore, supporting and strengthening the position of Vienna as the home, as the hub of digital humanism. But also showing that there's an investment in the future here, that it's not about just, having some nice statements, but actually supporting like research in this area. And we have set it up and designed it in such a way that we require interdisciplinary supervision teams. So it's not only that you do your PhD in one specific area, but you have to have connections to multiple areas here. And so we kind of force, academics also to work together and look at things, and also the PhD students to look at things from multiple perspectives, of course.
But I assume that many of the PhD students are doing this because they are trying to perceive an academic career, and it's, I think, still a rather risky choice to, in an early phase of your career, decide on that you will do something which is very, very heavily dealing with interdisciplinarity. So first, would you agree that this is a risky choice? Second, do you think that something, and if so, what would need to be changed? Or is it also part of the hopes that we have that this is going to change on its own by the drive coming out of the initiative on its own?
Of course, there's a lot of hope involved in this, but I mean, we have very brave PhD students. They're not afraid of doing this, and I think it already sends a very strong signal that they're signing up for an interdisciplinary PhD, right? Because it shows they understand things on a more holistic level, and not just from the one or one or two areas that they come from and might have a background in. At the same time, and I fully agree with you, it's still risky. This is a problem because the way that the university system, the way that academic system and everything is designed, it strongly is oriented on KPIs, on publications, all these things, and those happen very, very much within the disciplinary silos. And so there's their own culture, their own rules and so on within that. And if you don't adhere to that, if you don't fall into that specific scheme, if you don't follow that culture, it's very difficult to be super successful and visible also within that community. So that is definitely a danger that's involved here. We try to design it in such a way that we have to have an interdisciplinary perspective, ideally publications also in different disciplines, but people are naturally embedded in one research group foremost. So this is also where they get their PhD from. We don't have an interdisciplinary PhD that people can pursue, but we do want specialists in different areas, yes, but with the knowledge of other areas, with the understanding of methodology, with the understanding of what can I get from this methodology, where are the limitations, what kind of validity do I get from different types of approaches. And that, I think, is a plus, and only a plus, because when it comes to, let's say, what these people do afterwards, it's not only that you're an expert in your field and you're gonna have a job where you only do that. I think in the job market, in the real world afterwards, I think the capabilities and the and being also trained in a way, that way of listening to different perspectives, of listening to different approaches, of understanding how to constructively use these things. I think that is really like one of the biggest values that we can present here.
Yeah. So let's look a little bit into the future, if you agree. So it started in 2019, so it's 6 years now. Let's assume we have a similar conversation in 2031 then, in 6 years. So what would we talk about then if things go well? What is the outcome in the next 6 years?
So, like starting with the doctoral college, I mean, we're gonna have the first cohort having finished by then, right? So that would be the one thing that where we can really talk about the success stories, hopefully, of those topics, and also like getting some more. Like already talking about like the career paths that these people have taken and that have finished this. I think that would be very interesting. I mean, this is work in progress. We will see. We do our best. I think on another level, I would really like on a bigger level, again, coming back to policy, coming maybe back to Brussels as well. I think we should see, hopefully we would see a world or like a Europe that has understood the necessity of some digital sovereignty, like to understand that we can't just be like can't just pick which product is better for us that we use in order to be more efficient, but understand that we need to invest also in our own capabilities. If we want to have, let's say, tech with responsibility or something like that, then we have to build it ourselves. We have to develop that expertise, and we have to do that in a broad societal consensus, large as possible. I think that is really the goal, and I think that means strengthening really the capacity and like the opportunities, the perspectives that people have that are engaged in these areas, not only technical areas, but people like dealing with the digital world in the broadest sense. What is the goal that they have right now? What is what we can promise? What is the vision that we can give them right now? For many people, it is, I want to be a programmer, a developer, something in that context. And who are the companies I can work for? And these are mostly American companies. And I don't think that this is the European perspective if Europeans don't have a European perspective. So I think we need to make sure that we don't have a brain drain, all of these things. So by then, I hope we have a more flourishing, working ecosystem based on the principles that we understand that this is expensive, but we're also able in other areas to do that. But we have to foster a system where we keep the best people here and they innovate within Europe. And this comes back to this innovation question. I think if the rules are clear and if the playing field is level, I think there's going to be lots of opportunities for innovation. That doesn't have to be something that costs us, our fundamental rights.
And what is the role of Vienna in this scenario then?
Well, it's always gonna be the origin of that movement. But I hope it's gonna be like the central and strongest hub in a strong network of local initiatives. I don't think necessarily that everybody will have to have the same way of interpreting that and understanding that. But I think there should be a very like common shared, let's say, foundation of values and understanding what technology, how it should be done, the way that we develop. And I think that should be, let's say, a European perspective. And that's, again, there's a lot of diversity, of course, a lot of regional diversity and so on that should be part of this. So part of digital humanism is also to respect that community, that local, that local identity to some extent as well, and make sure that this is preserved, even though technology is kind of like norming everything involuntarily and implicitly. But I think that should be strengthened at the same time, this European dimension and perspective. I want to see that also on the tech side.
Yeah, and I would assume that Vienna, with all its history, would be a rather good place for that.
Right? Absolutely, I think people can agree that stuff like that happens in Vienna.
In Vienna, absolutely. Let us close this slowly by asking, what should somebody do if they wanted to connect with the initiative or the college or the thoughts that are developed in this group? What would be the best approach? What should people do?
Right. So I think one thing is to check out where we have where we appear. There's multiple players in the Digital Humanism initiative. So we participate in panel discussions and outreach. We have discussion rounds where people are invited. So there's the page dighum.org somewhere in the
down here,
of course. So this is like the ongoing things. We also have very low barrier lecture series that happens like about once a month, where we invite an expert, international expert, to talk about one topic that is relevant to digital humanism. And it's easy to just follow that on YouTube, or to join also the Zoom session and ask questions and participate in that. And I think that's lots of entry points. You will see the people that are involved, and I'm sure you can reach out to them. We're always happy to hear.
Thank you so much, Peter.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.